Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and if you're like me, you're probably wondering at this point, where is Apple's rumored 16-inch MacBook Pro? We have been hearing rumors about this laptop for so long now, and I personally thought that we would have seen it by now. I mean, we've had Apple's September event where they announced new iPhones, new Apple Watch, and no 16-inch MacBook Pro to be found, but that was okay. Apple usually holds some sort of October event, and they will announce some Mac stuff there usually, but October came and went, and still no 16-inch MacBook Pro, so where is it? Well, you might be inclined to believe that if the 16-inch MacBook Pro hasn't shown up yet, there's no chance that Apple will release it this year in 2019. But strangely enough, there are rumors still indicating that the 16-inch MacBook Pro is slated to be released this year. So for this video, I wanted to go over everything we know about Apple's rumored 16-inch MacBook Pro, including the design, maybe a new keyboard, some of the specs we can expect to see on this laptop, and maybe, just maybe, a release date coming very soon. Okay, first let's start off with the design of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, because I think this is where a lot of people are excited, because obviously who doesn't want a bigger screen MacBook Pro that should be around the same body size as the 15.4-inch MacBook Pro that we see now. However, here's where you might want to temper down your expectations a little bit, because originally we were expecting a 16-inch MacBook Pro that was bezel-less. We were expecting a design that was very similar to something like the iPad Pro with a liquid retina display with rounded corners. Because it looks like in the leaked icon from macOS 10.15.1, we are seeing a 16-inch MacBook Pro that, although it does have slimmer bezels, it isn't what a lot of people were expecting when earlier rumors were saying we were getting a bezel-less MacBook Pro. You can still see the bezels on this icon. And while a lot of people will say that this icon looks very similar to the 15-inch, it does look similar to it, but you can see that if you put them side by side, that this rumored 16-inch icon does have reduced bezels. Not only that, but initial reports of the rumored 16-inch MacBook Pro also said that it would come in a very similar body size to the 15-inch MacBook Pro. Now, this size does seem very similar, and again, we are just basing this off leaks on icons found inside of macOS, so we can't really say how accurate this is going to be in real-life size depictions, but going based on these icon leaks, which are pretty much official, I mean, they are in macOS, we can see that if you put the 16-inch MacBook Pro side by side with the 15-inch icon, the 16-inch icon is a little bigger. And we also have leaks inside of macOS which appear to show off the keyboard, and from that leak you can also see that the speaker grills on this MacBook Pro look to be extended a little bit further. So this 16-inch MacBook Pro, although it probably comes in a similar size to the 15-inch, don't expect the same exact body size. It looks like it's going to be slightly bigger. Okay, moving on. Another big feature coming to the 16-inch MacBook Pro is actually kind of an older feature. So with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, Apple is rumored to be including a scissor switch mechanism for the keyboard. Obviously, Apple has faced a ton of issues and problems with their butterfly keyboards that they have been using ever since they introduced the 12-inch MacBook, and they have used up until now. So it looks like Apple is getting rid of the butterfly keyboard and will finally be reintroducing a scissor switch mechanism, and obviously because it's using that more traditional, reliable mechanism, we should expect to get more keyboard travel and also a more reliable keyboard. I think the keyboard will feel very similar to the current Magic Keyboard 2, which is the keyboard you get if you purchase an iMac. The keys on the Magic Keyboard 2 look thin enough to include inside of a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and no one has complained about the reliability on the iMac keyboard. Again, going back to some of those leaks out of macOS, we actually have a picture of the purported 16-inch MacBook Pro keyboard, and you can see there is a slight change here. And that is that Touch ID is a separate key from the touch bar, unlike the previous versions of the MacBook Pro. This also lines up with earlier rumors saying that the keyboard will be redesigned to include a physical escape key. So it looks like we're getting a separate key for the Touch ID, and we're also getting a separate key for the escape key, even though we haven't seen any leaks of the other side of the laptop where the escape key is. This leak also confirms two other important details. The first being is that the touch bar is going to stay on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Some people thought that maybe Apple would abandon the touch bar completely, but after Apple just recently released an entry-level 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the big feature with that was the inclusion of the touch bar, I pretty much figured that the 16-inch MacBook Pro would still have a touch bar. It looks like Apple is going to try it out a little while longer at least. The second thing we can learn from this leak is obviously the Touch ID sensor is there, so there's going to be no Face ID on the 16-inch 2019 MacBook Pro. A lot of people, myself included, were hoping that Face ID would eventually make its way to the Mac this year. But again, it looks like we're going to have to wait a little while longer before we see Face ID implemented on the Mac. Okay, so what sort of specs can we expect from the 16-inch MacBook Pro? Well, based on leaks, it looks like this MacBook Pro will feature 9th generation Intel Coffee Lake H chips, which are the same chips that are currently found on the 15-inch MacBook Pro. So we can expect those 8-core processors from the 15-inch to also be in the 16-inch. Now, does this mean that we will get the same exact performance on the 16-inch MacBook Pro that's on the 15-inch MacBook Pro? Well, that really depends how much of a redesign the 16-inch MacBook Pro has on the inside. For example, the processors on the current 15-inch model run very close to base clock speed, especially when you're doing tasks for a long period of time. It can't handle that much heat to constantly be running those processors at the higher turbo boost speeds. Now, even though based on leaks, this 16-inch version looks very similar to the 15-inch version, we could be seeing more of a major redesign on the internals. Think of the iMac versus the iMac Pro. The iMac and the iMac Pro look very, very similar, but if you were to take apart the iMac Pro, you would see that the inside of that machine is very different with a revamped cooling system, and that makes the iMac Pro run super quiet, and it's able to handle those Xeon cores at increased turbo speeds. So even if these are the same Intel CPUs inside of the 15 and 16 inch, if Apple is planning an internal redesign of the MacBook Pro by putting in a better cooling system, we could theoretically see better performance. As for graphics, we are also seeing leaks out of macOS 10.15.1 showing that these new Apple laptops might support AMD Radeon RX 5300M and Radeon RX 5500M. So it looks like we might be getting better base RX GPUs inside of the 16-inch, but I also suspect there will be options for Vega graphics as well. As for other specs, I think we can expect to see a 16GB RAM configuration as standard with options for 32GB and maybe 64GB. Now, I think the base storage on this device is actually going to be 512GB. I say that because the rumored 16-inch is rumored to start at $3,000, and if we look at the current Mac lineup, we can see that the 15.4-inch MacBook Pro with 8 cores and 512GB with 16GB of RAM starts at $2,799. So if the 16-inch MacBook Pro is an upgrade from the current 15-inch, I think it makes sense to start that price at $3,000 and offer it in the same memory and storage configurations. Now, before we go on to the release date, there is another thing I want to mention, and that is we don't really know the port situation on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I really haven't seen any rumors indicating what we can expect. Now, here's what I think we can expect. So I don't think we're suddenly going to get USB-A ports on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. I think Apple is here to stay with Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports, and I still think we can expect 4 of them on this laptop design. Okay, what about the release date? What about the availability of the 16-inch MacBook Pro? When can we expect this? Is this really going to launch in November in 2019? I think there might be a good chance that, yeah, it might be coming out pretty soon. We have recent reports by IHS analyst Jeff Lynne that says production of the new MacBook Pro will start in September. So September's coming past. It seems like this has already entered production. On top of that, we also have a Final Cut Pro 10 Summit slated for tomorrow, and at this Final Cut Pro Summit, we have an invitation that says this year the summit starts with a visit to the Apple Park Visitor Center and will feature some surprises from the Apple product team. Now, I think that statement's really interesting. Some surprises from Apple's product team. Now, I think you can read this one or two ways. So the first being is that the Mac Pro and Pro Display XDR will be at this Final Cut Pro 10 Summit. They'll probably have some hands-on demos explaining some of it, and then maybe they'll release some of the configuration pricing for some of the higher-end Mac Pro specs. But I am a little hung up on that word surprise. I don't know if the Mac Pro and Pro Display XDR would be a surprise at this event. Maybe I guess it would, considering it hasn't really been shown off in public. But I think this might also be a really good time to show off the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Because let's face it, if this laptop is supposed to launch this year, I don't think there's any time for Apple to hold another event. Of course, they could always do a press release like they just recently did with AirPods Pro, but I think this Final Cut Pro 10 Summit is a pretty good event to announce a 16-inch MacBook Pro. You're already going to have a lot of press on hand, and the people that are going to the summit are the people that would be very interested in purchasing a 16-inch MacBook Pro. And I think this would honestly be a pretty smart strategy by Apple. So not only would you have this little event to show off the MacBook Pro, you can tell the story a little bit to the press, but then you can also issue a press release saying the 16-inch MacBook Pro is now available, here are the starting prices, here are the configurations, and I think that would probably be the best way to launch this laptop at this time without holding an event. So honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if I'm back again tomorrow updating you on another video about the availability of the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But let me know what you think. Do you think that the 16-inch MacBook Pro is coming soon? What do you think about the rumored design? What are your most requested features? As always, if you want to support the channel out in any way, make sure you check out some of the links in the description. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.